Yo, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing what if Deku was depressed slash had a quirk. For this, I'm gonna be saying that One for All can function as well. Oh, manga spoilers. First, it can first the in the manga why the One for All users were dying so quickly is because that they had a quirk. If you have a quirk using One for All, the body is not meant for holding two quirks. If you have two quirks, well, in My Hero Academia's case, your body will slowly die out because it has too many quirks in its body. So only quirkless people can use the quirk, and voila, All Might and Izuku was able to harness all of the full power. Well, All Might was not, but Izuku was able to harness all the full power in the manga. So what I'm gonna be saying is All for One, One for All will manage just as fine, because I think that's stupid. Because as All Might said, All for One will be able to combine and enhance your quirk. So that with that logic speaking, they should merge together into one simple quirk. At least that's my understanding of One for All. So that's the logic I'm going to be using. One for All and the user's quirk will merge together into one entity of a quirk, which means their body will not die out, and just their body will not die. So Izuku will have a quirk. It is a very weak quirk. His quirk is just called Sword. Only a sword. And the logic I'm going to be using is kind of like Asta's Demon Slayer. Nobody would be able to lift it, not even the user, if the user does not have proper training. The user, or in this case Izuku, can't even summon it if he doesn't have proper training in swordsmanship, and his body is not built the way it should be. Kind of like Asta's body, though, when he first was able to use Demon Slayer, if you don't have that kind of body, you're not going to be able to summon or use the sword at all. So when Izuku learned about this, he was kind of down in the dumps, but he was still pretty happy because, he has a quirk. He's able to become a hero like he always wanted to be, and like his father wanted him to be. But unfortunately, his father died of cancer. Um, his father died of cancer, um, and they were pretty. Ingo and Izuku were pretty saddened by this, but they Hasashi told Inko and Izuku to keep living on, but he will always be in their heart. That kind of cheesy cliche type of stuff. Izuku is sad about it, but as long as he still has one family member, he can get by, and he can always remember his father, Hasashi. As long as he keeps him alive in his heart, he'll never be forgotten. Oh my god, that was so cheesy. I'm sorry. Sorry if that was too cheesy. But let's get back into this. As Izuku told Katsuki Bakugo about his quirk, and then as this is just the backstory. I'm not gonna this is just the backstory. We're gonna get into the anime. It's about 1 second. So Katsuki Bakugo, he tells Katsuki Bakugo about his quirk. Katsuki proceeds to bully him about having a weak quirk like that. Weak Deku, they're going to call him, because, Bakugo is just plain evil. So as Bakugo and Izuku started to have a stale relationship, Izuku is not like the Izuku in canon. Like, he's not all goody two shoes. Well, he is, but at the same time, he isn't. If you talk about him, he will hold a grudge. But let's get back into this. As Izuku and Bakugo had a stale relationship, Bakugo would always try to hurt Deku and bully him, and Izuku would kind of be hurt and bullied because he couldn't summon his quirk or his sword because he doesn't have the proper training to use it. So Izuku was just down in the dumps. He was pretty depressed that his only friend, Katsuki Bakugo, was bullying him and calling him worthless. But that didn't stop Izuku's ultimate goal of becoming the #1 hero. In his mind, that's just one less distraction of him becoming the #1. And it sets up a good rivalry for him and a good character growth for him. This is what he's thinking in his head. But let's get to the actual sad parts. One day, Izuku is sleeping Inko is washing dishes until boom, the door suddenly bursted open, and then as a villain was waving his gun back and forth, telling him, "Get down, get down, get down! Give me all of your money!" As Inko was complying with all of the demands that the villain was saying until Izuku woke up from all of the commotion, got down, and saw what's happening. As the villain got spooked and shot at Izuku, as Izuku took a bullet to the shoulder, then as Inko tried to rush the villain with a knife, she got shot point blank in the chest. Um, as Izuku was lying there in the pool of his own blood, and as his mother crawled towards him and was cuddling him to the chest, was cuddling him, and he's about, let's say, 5 years old at the time. So Izuku was just technically 5 years old when this happened. So as he woke up and saw Inko's dead corpse, the police was already there, bursted through the door, waving their guns, and then as Izuku started to have a panic attack because he saw a gun. A gun is kind of like his trigger in this one. If he sees a gun, he will get triggered and start to cry, start to shake out, as PTSD users would do. And yes, I know some PTSD users, and I know this stuff could happen. So yeah. And so as they called the ambulance got in there, and they didn't see anything wrong with Izuku. All Izuku has is PTSD. And before all of the cops got there, Shoto Aizawa got there because he heard gunshots nearby. As he got there, he got the police and he was waiting for the police. But he's not going to adopt Izuku. Instead, Izuku will be put in foster care, and nobody really wanted to adopt Izuku because Izuku was really isolated from everybody else. He didn't really eat, didn't really talk to any of the other kids. All he did was just lope around, do nothing until one day, tragically, the orphanage or the orphanage home, it burned down due to a case of the stove being on too long and the food was burning. If you're wondering, the nuns or the adoption people were handling something else far away from the kitchen and even forgot they were cooking. Before the smoke alarms, and by the way, the place is very dingy, it's just very dingy. The smoke alarms did not work, so unfortunately, the adoption center burned down to the ground. Izuku was the only survivor, and yeah. Aside from having a bullet wound, you can visibly see because the bullet wound went straight through his arm, which basically means he has a disability now, and he doesn't really have any good motor functions with his left arm. On top of that, he has a severe burn mark, as he did in season 4, I think, when he got when he was fighting Muscular, and he got that little weird looking burn, that weird looking thing that looks like a burn mark. That's what it looks like. So and it happened to his left arm as well. So Izuku can no longer use that arm. If he does, he will break it permanently. So Izuku decided just to use his right arm, which is basically he had to learn how to write because he was a lefty. So he basically had to learn with only his right arm for the rest of his life. He can use his left arm sometimes, but can't really use it without breaking it or having constant pain. So Izuku had to move to another adoption center, but this time he got bullied, beaten. He doesn't really eat, but the people at the orphanage has forced him to eat, but all he really eats is an apple or sometimes oatmeal, but that didn't really fill him up either. Until one day, All Might came, the number one hero, because All Might is a pretty nice guy, so he'll do stuff like that. He'll come to orphanages and sign autographs and stuff. He went door to door to every person in the orphanage or in the adoptive center home, whatever you want to call it, until he got to a room that says Deku. Because Izuku thinks of himself as a Deku because he couldn't save anyone at the orphanage. He couldn't save his mother. Bakugo called him Deku. So he forgot his name, so that's what he calls himself, Deku. He's been through so much trauma, and yes, people have hit him in the head or kicked him in the head multiple times to the point where he can only hear Deku in his head. People calling him Deku. So that's what he thinks his name is. The doctors have confirmed this. So as All Might knocked on the door, and as Izuku opened the door, he is 10 at this point. And then as All Might saw the condition that Izuku was in, Izuku was dumbfounded. And then he went to the people who were taking care of the kids. And then they told All Might about Izuku's state of condition, how nobody wants to adopt him because he looks weird, and how he isolates himself, and how he ever really talks. Doesn't really talk. He just nods and shakes his head on rare occasions. On the other rare occasions, he just looks at you with cold, dead eyes. As All Might felt pity and sadness for him, so he decided to adopt Izuku. So as he filled out the papers, as Izuku didn't really care for the heroes and villain stuff, he didn't really care for all of that. As All Might learned about Izuku's quirk and how he was too weak to use it, he decided to help Izuku out and decide to train him a little bit. Train him up to be a hero that he always wanted to be before he became depressed and, stuff like that. As Izuku came home with All Might doesn't really have a big old mansion. He has a separate built house. It's a pretty good house, two bedrooms, a pretty good sized a TV that's on the wall, pretty good house. He doesn't have any maids or like that. He's very humble, He has a decent sized living up house, and he also has an upstairs and a downstairs. He also has a basement where he just basically plays video games and stuff like that. All Might is very childish, as you know and see in the anime. So as Izuku and All Might came to the house, all Izuku felt was he felt like he was a burden on All Might because, he's the number one hero. He has stuff to do. He can't be worrying about a little scrawny kid like him. As All Might pats Izuku on the shoulder and says, "Don't worry, kid. I know what you may be thinking. Oh, I'm the number one hero. I have other stuff to do than worrying about a kid. Don't worry. Doesn't matter. You're my son now, and I'm your father. We should get along, since we're going to be spending the rest of our lives together, until I die." And yes, All Might has not had the injury yet. He has not had the injury yet. As, about 5 months, almost a year has passed, Izuku got comfortable with All Might and the rest of the heroes at UA. Or, they have came to All Might's house, for boys' night out. Aizawa has come too, just because, for the fun of it, I guess. Just comes just to go there, just so he won't be bored. And he has gotten comfortable with Aizawa, and Aizawa does remember him as the kid he saved. And as he told Izuku that, and as Izuku said, "Thank you for saving him," that's what he said for the first time. And as All Might was started to tear up with joy because Izuku started to warm up to everybody around him. And as Izuku felt like he was home, All Might was his father, and Aizawa was his uncle and mentor of sorts, and he does train Izuku. Izuku can summon his sword, but, he can summon his sword, but he doesn't really have swordsmanship in it. So Aizawa decided to enroll him in a karate center. So Izuku knows taijutsu, kenjutsu, hand-to-hand combat, boxing, kickboxing, the essential stuff. And he also knows how to cross between taijutsu and kickboxing. So yeah, Izuku's pretty versatile when it comes to his hands. And Recovery Girl was able to heal some parts of Izuku's scars, so he is able to use his hands. But he does prefer to use his feet. But when push comes to shove, he'll use every part of his limbs to get the job done. And Izuku he's not a master swordsman, but he does know how to get his way around his sword. He can fight an entire army with just his sword. And yes, Izuku does have a lot of scars. Even though this doesn't show, Izuku does have a lot of scars from his past of bullying and neglect. Well, not neglect, just bullying. Until one day, you guessed it, the fight between All For One and All Might. It went differently where All Might actually lost towards All For One, but he was able to do 100 United States of Smash to defeat All For One temporarily. So as All Might was carted to the hospital as fast as he could, until the doctors dropped the bomb that All Might wouldn't last much longer. He would die by tomorrow, or maybe even in his sleep. As Izuku heard this, he started to get flashbacks to when he couldn't save Inko. Now his father is the one person he can truly call father, was about to die. And Izuku couldn't do anything about it. All he could do is just sit there on his deathbed. And All Might has told Izuku about One For All. All Might was considering Izuku as a candidate, but now he actually will have One For All. As everybody was crowded around All Might, and as Endeavor was tearing up a little bit, and then as he said to All Might, I was supposed to surpass you, but not like this. I was supposed to surpass you the old-fashioned way. I was supposed to be stronger than you. I was supposed to defeat you in our 100th battle. As All Might looked at Endeavor and chuckled a little bit, but then he coughed up blood. Don't worry, Endeavor. Between now and when you first enrolled in UA, you have already surpassed me. Aizawa, please, when I die, take care of Izuku for me. I know he sees you as a secondary father, and you are my best friend and always will be. You will always be, all of you, will always be my friends. You have to remember me, not just in your hearts, but carry on my legacy as the number one. I know that sounds a little selfish. As Izuku started to cry, and then as he hugged All Might and said, that's not selfish. You deserve it. You deserve every praise that you have gotten over the years. As a father, as the number one hero, as a friend. Your heart is what made everybody put a smile on their face when nobody else had one. You had a smile, which made me smile. As All Might was tearing up too, and then as he said, I don't want to die. I have so much to live for. I don't want to die. I don't want to leave you here, Izuku. Over these past 5 months, I've seen you as my own son. I don't want to die and leave you behind. As everybody started to cry, and then as All Might felt that One For All was dying with him, then as he said, everyone, can you please leave me and Izuku for a second? He'll be right out. As everyone did leave. And then as All Might said, do you remember One For All in our talk? As Izuku's eyes widened and as he started to cry even more. But you were supposed to find someone else. I already told you. I'm not worthy. I could save my mother. I could save the people at the orphanage. I couldn't even save you. But I'm not worthy of your power. And as All Might said, Izuku, look at me. As All Might put a smile on his face once more, and then as he plucked a hair out of his, he plucked the hair and gave it to Izuku, and as Izuku took it and looked at it, you are the most worthiest person I've ever saw in my life. You are my son, and therefore, it's almost your birthright. As All Might laughed a little, but as All Might coughed up blood, and as he said, Izuku, if you don't eat that, all for one will die with me. Please, take it, and become the #1 hero that I know you can be. I know you will surpass me, Endeavor, and everyone who came before. As Izuku cried and ate the hair, and as All Might said, it will take a couple of hours for it to fully activate. But I want you to push past your limits and go beyond plus ultra. I want you to carry the next generation of heroes. Now I know you're only 11 at this point, but I know you can understand this, Izuku. I love you. I always will love you. I love you too, Dad. As All Might started to flatline, and then as the doctors rushed in and said, "Kid, you have to get out." Oh, I don't want to leave him. I don't want to. Stop. No. All Might died. And as All Might died, with a smile on his face, as Izuku fell unconscious or started to seizure out, and he started to remember all of the times that he couldn't save everybody, and now this changes everything. It's time skip to about 3 years. Over those 3 years, Izuku couldn't get over the fact that All Might died, but he took All Might's words to heart and trained his absolute hardest. Izuku's 13 at this point, and he can control about 5% full cowling at this point. No, actually, he's 15 at this point. This is the last year of middle school. Izuku has isolated himself even more than he already was, but he took All Might's words to heart, and he trained. He pushed past his limits. He could control 5% of one for all at this point, and he does no full cowling. But his full cowling is kind of weak because Izuku hinders himself. His physical mind hinders himself from accessing the full power of All for One. I mean, One for All, since he still thinks he's unworthy of the power. Now, as everything goes on in canon except Bakugo, he hasn't seen Bakugo ever since he was 5 years old. So, yeah. Or ever since Inko died. So, that is where I'm going to stop at. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on those notifications for part 2. I really want to continue this series. I think this series will do amazing, so I hope you all enjoy it. As I will see you later. Bye.